Hello everyone and welcome back to Full House Sports here with myself, Charlie. Right, yesterday was the launch press conference for Chris Eubank Jr. versus Eubank-Benn 2. It was fairly eventful. There was some quite unsavoury moments that I want to speak about in a moment regarding that. Just quickly on the press conference, I'll say unsavoury moments. I thought the whole Eubank interrupting Eddie Hearn and then the Ricky Hatton death coming up was unsavoury, and I really wasn't a fan of it. Now, whether Eddie Hearn initially intended to pay tribute to Ricky Hatton is something that I see being debated on X. That's not the point. Chris Eubank interrupted him, of course. Then Hearn said, I was looking to pay tribute to Ricky Hatton. And then afterwards, Matchroom, IFL TV, other outlets on YouTube and other social media were posting the clips saying, Eddie Hearn tried to pay tribute and Eubank interrupted it. I don't think that was a situation for point scoring. And in a scenario where you're trying to sell a fight, that's probably the lowest of the low. Like I say, you don't know whether Eddie Hearn was going to pay tribute to Ricky Hatton. It didn't. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. It didn't really add up to me because the tributes had been done at the start. It would have been ideal then for Eddie Hearn to say, oh, by the way, while we're at it, I'd like to have my part. I worked very closely with him, with his son Campbell. He didn't, and then he left it till then. And actually, he went to start, and then Eubank went, no, shut up, or whatever he said. And then Hearn said, I was actually going to pay tribute to Ricky Hatton. So, I don't know. It should have never came up, in my opinion. I thought you can't obviously cancel everything because of what's happened with Ricky and with his death. I didn't think the press conference was the best time in any way with regards to that. The fight's in November. You're not telling me they couldn't have had a press conference maybe next Wednesday. They couldn't have waited till then. Like, I don't know. I know people say, well, it's been booked in for a while now, so it needed to be done. Yeah, could you not have cancelled it out of respect for Ricky Hatton? I don't know. If that was always going to come up, then you never know. But more on the fight, I was looking around on social media, and there seem to be two camps with this fight. The camp of brilliant, fantastic, fight of the year last time out, let's get it on again, can't wait when tickets go out. And then the camp that I'm sort of leaning towards, which is, does anyone actually need to see this again? And that's key word there, need. Because the first fight was a fantastic fight of the year. I think the only fight that potentially, certainly on British soil, could compete with it was probably Jack Rafferty against Mark Chamberlain, which, if you haven't checked out, was an absolute banger the other week in Altrincham. Proper domestic dust-up. That's the only fight that could really compete with it. But apart from that, do we need to see it again? I feel like that first fight was almost too perfect, where you don't need to see it again. You know, there was the build-up, there was the egg, there was the Eubank struggling with weight, there was Eubank Senior turned up on the night in sort of WWE style. It gave everyone goosebumps. Then the fight itself, both the dads in the ring shaking hands, and as if to say, you know, now our sons take over the legacy. They have a fight of the year, fantastic. That for me should have then been right, move on. Eubank-Benn's not a middleweight. He's far too small, and Chris Eubank Jr. is too big for him. And I'm sorry, I think, especially with Bomac in the corner, which is a very interesting addition, I think this time it'll be even more decisive in Chris Eubank Jr.'s favour. I think a good, bigger man will most of the time beat a good little man. I know people will look at Crawford and Canelo and say, well, that's proved that theory wrong, but Crawford is better than Canelo boxing-wise. I don't think Eubank-Benn's better than Chris Eubank boxing-wise. So actually, not only is he giving away a weight advantage, I actually think he's giving away a skill advantage. I just think neither fighter really, they could have moved on with their careers. Eubank should really probably have looked at going back down to super welter or even welterweight. If he can do that, that's the question now. He's put on that much muscle, can he get back down? You saw Terence Crawford saying, well, I'm not going to go back down to super welterweight because I don't think he can do it. We saw what it did to Roy Jones Jr. when he kept hopping up and down weights. Like, it's tough on a fighter's body. My thing is that I think he should have just said, right, one and done. I've done what I need to do in that aspect. The grudge is settled. I'm going to go and try and win a world title. Because actually, I don't think a win over Eubank Jr. does a great deal for him, because people will say, well, his legs are gone, he's dehydrated, and he's 36 now. And for Chris Eubank Jr., I don't think 2 wins over Conor Benn do a lot for him. The first fight probably did because of the circumstances with the weight. I don't necessarily think a second win does. I feel like I said, the first fight was almost too perfect, and that should have been that. Move on with your careers. You know, we saw Lewis Crocker at the weekend calling Conor Benn out. That's a great fight to make. That's a bloodbath down at welterweight. Could you have gone down that route? The 154 division, I keep saying it, super welterweight, is stacked. You got Boots, you got Virgil Ortiz, you got Xander Zayas, you got Fundora, you got Keith Thurman, you got Josh Kelly. You've got all these guys there who are there in and around. I know people say, Josh Kelly, where's he fit in that? Well, it's a domestic fight for Conor Benn, and one that probably sells well. There's others in that division as well. Erickson Lubin, we just saw Brandon Adams win against Serhii Bohachuk, Madrimov. All these great fights. Conor Benn's name will get him those fights because it sells well. For Eubank Jr., could he not have maybe looked at the 160 to 168? I think he can't do 160 or 168. You know, there's talk that maybe he could have got himself the Canelo fight. I don't know. Could he sat and waited it out and then took that fight? Potentially. Could he have looked at the Crawford fight? Crawford might be looking at for opponents at 168. I mean, they're two outrageous shouts. I know what people say, and I get it. I'm coming from a pure boxing fan point of view. Money-wise, there is no other fight that makes these two that much money. That's a fact. So they're going to say, well, actually, why would we not take this fight when it's going to make us way more money than when we face off against the more skilled guys in our respective weight divisions, potentially lose and make a fraction of the amount we're going to make? So I get why it's being made. I just feel like it's a bit of a waste of time. I think Eubank Jr. will win more decisively. I think Bomac's shown that what he could do for Eubank Jr. Ben Shalom mentioned it yesterday. I was at the Eubank Jr. I was at both fights, both his Liam Smith fights. And you could see in the second fight just how much better he was and how much more disciplined he was. He wasn't engaging with Liam Smith. He wasn't wild. He stuck to the game plan. Bomac had drilled it into him. So, you know, do we need to see it again? I don't think we do. And I think for Conor Benn as well, who's still a young fighter, these two losses, with what he's put his body through, going up in weight, if he loses twice, that is. But I think if he loses twice, where does that leave him? I think it's unnecessarily risky for him. He doesn't need to take this fight. It shouldn't be going on again. I get why it is. Will I watch it? Probably. I think everyone will watch it because of how good the first fight was. Do I think it will be as good as the first fight? No. Do I think it will be the same outcome? Yes. And a deciding factor on Conor Benn's career? Yes. And that's a massive sacrifice to make. But like I say, financially, completely get why it's being made. I just wish they'd just moved on with their careers respectively, and that was that. But hey, we'll wait and see. We'll see what happens. Thank you very much, guys, for watching as always, and have a great day. Thank you.